Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. We'll give everyone just a few moments to get into the room here. Thank you so much for joining us here today. All right, we're going to go ahead and jump in and get started. Greetings, everyone. My name is Raquel Guzman. I am the Operations Manager here at Momentum Events. It is my great pleasure to welcome you here for today's webinar. Before I turn things over to our presenters, just a few words of note. This webinar is being recorded. The recording will be shared in our thank you email, which will be sent 24 hours after the webinar. We will also share contact information for you to reach out in case you have any questions after the presentation. Secondly, we encourage you to participate and engage by asking questions to our presenters throughout the presentation. We have reserved time at the end of the webinar for Q&A, but please feel free to ask any questions that you may have using the question and answer button, which you'll find at the bottom of your Zoom control panel. With that, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to our presenters. Matt Whipple, VP of Marketing Services and Campaign Strategy at Speedeon and Data. John Esmeraldino, Manager Media and Demand Generation at FanDuel. And Jack Drillich, Manager Media and Demand Generation at FanDuel as well. For today's webinar titled Utilizing Direct Mail and a Go-To Market Strategy. We are thrilled to have them here today. And with that, I will turn it over to our presenters.
Great, thanks Raquel. Thanks everyone for taking the time this afternoon to join us. Wanted to quickly address the webinar. I know the title is Using Direct Mail in a Go-to-Market Strategy, but once we saw the registrants come in, the diverse group we had, we decided to pivot slightly and just take a broader approach. We'll discuss a little bit how FanDuel uses direct mail, how they think about it, hopefully share some learnings these guys have from their point of view, so that everyone hopefully will walk away with a little bit of learning that you didn't have coming into today, rather than just being focused on folks who are going to market per se. So again, I'm Matt Whipple. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, John and Jack from the FanDuel side. Really appreciate you guys being here today. I'd love to kind of, before we start, hear a little bit about your experience with direct mail prior to your roles at FanDuel. Jack, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, Matt. It's great to be here. Saying hello to everyone in the panel, participants. And again, thank you for the opportunity to talk. I'll say I've been here at FanDuel at this point. It's been a whirlwind, but I'd say a year and a half. And prior to that, I had no direct mail experience working at the agency, primarily responsible for digital and TV. So it's been a brand new media channel and opportunity, and I'm glad I've been able to take that on. Again, prior to John starting, been managing that channel, and now with John on board, again, he's taken over the mantle, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Hey, everyone. My name is John Esmeraldino. I am the Manager of Media and Demand Generation at FanDuel. I've been here since, was it December 1st? So fairly new. However, I'm not new to direct mail. So I managed our direct mail channel at jet.com. So yeah, really excited to have this conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And a little bit about my DM background. Here at Speedeon, I primarily help brands launch, scale, optimize the direct mail channel. And prior to joining Speedeon, I did that at a subscription box startup. And before that, I was at a big box retailer doing catalog, retail flyer, and promotional postcard mailings. So love to start, guys, just talking a little bit about what are some ways that FanDuel uses direct mail today. John, can you kick that off for us?
Yeah, for sure. So we have a significant budget that we need to manage at scale, and therefore we need to diversify our channel mix. So direct mail is a medium, unlike anything else, that really helps us diversify ourselves and tailor our messaging. Because we're in a hyper growth mode, and we primarily use direct mail for prospecting. We actually use our first party and various third-party data sources to develop these segmented mailing lists at scale, and we usually send those at key seasonal or event-driven times of the year. We also review audience and our customer behavior to determine the best communication points to help drive actions.
So John, does that kind of mean like you may be able to identify, hey, this household is a better household to target through direct mail maybe than another channel, say, right? We think they don't have a TV subscription, so let's use direct mail to try to get their attention.
Of course, yeah. If we have that data at hand that we could utilize it, that's exactly what we could do.
Yeah, and then get into your first party data a little bit. I can imagine that's helpful too, to say, hey, this guy or gal seems interested in golf, where this guy or gal may be more interested in March Madness or NFL. So yeah, it can be pretty powerful stuff, I imagine.
Yeah, for sure.
Jack, do you have anything to add to that?
I think you had touched upon something that is of great importance, the ability to segment data and all the different ways that we need to and categorize people depending on their interest. And what that means is whether it's something more generic in terms of what we want to communicate or something specific to the type of person that they are, we can do so through the ability to do all that segmentation. So with that, you have the segmentation, and then you add in the elements in terms of creative execution and what we want to say to all those people and how we want to say it. And again, both of those things are very critical to our success. And if we do that correctly, we get right in front, again, into your hands and the hands of the people and say the right thing and as timely as possible. And again, for our business where time is everything, again, that's greatly important.
Yeah, we'll get into time, especially when it comes to a direct mail campaign a little later on, but that's a good point, right? Timing of a campaign, timing of an offer, timing of actually hitting the go button to when a piece of mail is delivered to the house, all of those aspects tie together to ultimately determine if a specific campaign or a time frame is successful. Thank you. So given that, I'd love to talk a little bit about maybe some of the challenges you see or face executing a direct mail campaign. And Jack, maybe it's a good place to start with you, being that obviously this was your first time through direct mail. And so what for you was challenging right off the bat?
I'm going to take this and kind of maybe, hopefully not too specific, but specific to us in the gaming industry. And one thing that is unique for FanDuel that might not be unique for other companies is that we have to work very closely with the regulator boards across the different states that have legalized sports betting. So that means being careful with how we target one-to-one, making sure, again, people are always 21 plus, and there's other requirements that go in. And because of that, and also that there's a tendency for regulators to change dates all the time, we have to always be flexible, especially with like when we go to printer, when we develop and hand over mock creatives for review and things like that. That maybe is a bit more challenging than other companies, but again, with the help of the agency, we're able to kind of overcome those things.
Yeah, so along that line, you're saying, right, we may kick off a campaign for, call it, right, MLB postseason, right? And we're not quite sure what the offer is going to be yet, but if we were to wait until we know, we may, to kick off at least the creative process, a lot of times we have to kind of build, be a step ahead of that, build templates, leave space, make sure we're ready as close to go as we can be, and then align with the other internal business.
Yeah. And I said the reality is in a COVID world, that right, is harder than usual in terms of will the sport get canceled or not? Something we have to factor in. But again, it's just always ensuring that we're being very attentive to detail and when things are due and if we need to buy more time and things like that.
Yeah, you think back to last March, just the uncertainty around, right, NBA is playing and all of a sudden they're walking off the court mid-game because the whole season is canceled. And then they have to take a look and say, okay, what do I have in process now that I can impact, or what's kind of gone? Because as we know, once a piece of mail is delivered to the post office, you can't stop it. There's no stopping it, and there is a delay there. So being buttoned up there can be a challenge, but it's something, at least in my opinion, we've been pretty good at managing together all the way through. So John, any challenges in your first 2 months here, or even from your previous role that you see or face with the direct mail channel?
Yeah, I think Jack nailed it on the head, but I want to add attribution. I think attribution's always very challenging. But with direct mail specifically, if you're new to direct mail, you have to use different methodologies. So we actually lean on Speedeon, but also our internal analytics team to understand the impact of direct mail as a channel itself. But yeah, I would add attribution as one of the challenges.
Yeah, and attribution too can happen so many ways, right? I have a lot of clients that really attribution means what promo code did someone use to ultimately transact. Or attribution could be from a digital standpoint, last click, right? What UTM parameters did I come through on? And with direct mail, right, we try to direct folks to specific landing pages or even use this QR code to get your offer. Not so much in your case, but in other cases I've seen, even if you do that, you ask someone to check out or transact a specific way, 80% of your matchback conversions generally will still come through direct to site or through paid search. So making sure that we have the right data in place to attribute appropriate conversions back to the channel is something, it's a challenge that we talk through really on a weekly basis. So let's get to the bright side. What are some of the advantages you guys see? Maybe Jack, you could kick that one off again for us.
Yeah, and I don't know if I said it as a negative before, but the fact that we can have direct one-to-one targeting is massive. And if you think of just media mix in general, like you have TV on one hand, and again, that talks to many, but here we can go to the individual or the family, and we have that through data. We know a bit more about those people, so then we can always customize the conversation depending on as we see fit. So just the ability to do that is huge. And then I think secondly, with direct mail, we love just the different formats that are available to us. So whether it's postcard or letter, and maybe I'm going too far right now, but again, we can always customize those based on the strengths and weaknesses of each of the pieces, depending on what it is that we want to achieve in the moment.
Yeah, and when you start talking formats, right, there's advantages and disadvantages to both, right? You see letter packs everywhere. See them from, right, bright colorful envelopes that are for the latest suitcase or meal kit, to white face envelopes that maybe a brand with lower brand recognition may use, so that, right, plain white envelope might be something important, I better open this, compared to in your case maybe putting FanDuel on the outside of the envelope is enough brand recognition to say, hey, this might be something I'm interested in when I open it up. And then you take the flip side to a postcard where there's no required action that the recipient has to take to get the message in front of them. It's a lot easier to toss without considering, but you still are going to have that split second window of, hey, I saw your brand, I saw your logo, I see this offer, and then even subconsciously make a decision if you want to react to that. So yeah, format testing is important. Obviously, you have to outweigh the pros and cons, right? Increased postage costs because we have increased number of panels that have to mail separately. We have the costs associated going from a postcard to a letter pack. Are we going to tip on cards? There's a whole bunch of things that really, to Jack's point, is advantageous because we have the ability to do that. We're not stuck in a specific banner window or a specific email subject line. So
maybe just one last thing I'd like to add. I think you make all great points that with direct mail, there are so many different ways that we can approach customers. So again, we mentioned different formats and size of the asset. Again, even within that, it's just how we want to speak within that asset, like whether we want to maybe focus more on the CTA or more on awareness. And again, with the complexity of our business, like we sometimes want to do both. We might want to do one or the other. We might need more space, which would warrant a letter as opposed to a smaller postcard. Again, these are all factors that we consider kind of each time that we go to market. But again, it's all valid. And it's, again, the ability to be versatile is key.
John, what do you see as advantages with the channel?
Yeah, so I think once you have your methodology in place, allows for clear measurement, right? You could really measure the incremental lift between your control and your exposed group.
Can you just clarify a little bit? Because obviously I'm familiar with incremental lift, and I'm sure a lot of folks are, but there are a lot of brands or marketers out there that really CPA or CAC is the measure that they use,
sure.
which often again ties back to promo code at checkout or specific UTM parameter. So what to you is incremental lift? How do you use it?
Okay, let me try to best explain it verbally without any diagrams or anything like that. But it's one of the big advantages for direct mail. So you have a group, right? You have a group that receives a direct mail piece, but then you also have a group that doesn't. So you have your control and you're exposed. And what we could do with confidence is measure the impact this specific campaign has. Does that help answer?
Yeah. So you're basically saying what my mail group respond at, what my control group respond at, the delta there is going to be our, and then apply that to total CIRC, total dollars spent, and start to come up with the incremental impact of either what would be that next dollar or what was $1 in your entire campaign. That's, in my opinion, one of the great things about direct mail, especially your business is a little different, right? You're not shipping a product, you don't have necessarily a delivery address, but for a traditional cataloger or even a B2C brand, right? I've got a mail piece. I have 100,000 addresses. I have 200,000 people that purchased from me and had an item shipped to me last month. What's my overlap look like to both my mail and my control group there?
Yeah.
Anything else there, John?
Yeah, no, I was actually going to add offer testing as well. Something else that we do a lot in our category, or at least our category does a lot of, but allows us to clearly measure the nuances of different offers. Really just trying to understand what resonates most with our audience. Since we are in hyper growth mode, this is something that that's important.
Yeah, I've seen, obviously just the space you're in, right? What does $100 free mean from company X compared to company B? And in direct mail, you can clearly kind of make sure there's no surprises, right? For anyone, hey, this is what we mean by it. This is, our promise to you for signing up. That's great. What about, John, do you have any advantages you can talk to when it comes to audience segmentation on your end?
Yeah, so I think we touched on it earlier, right? When we talked about utilizing our first party data. So like you mentioned, like sport interests are something that you could target, or you could leverage for your audience segmentation. State level flexibility as well, which is great about direct mail.
So you mean when you say state level, you might have, right, if you're alive in California, right? You might have to message things a specific way due to California regulations compared to Texas, right?
For sure.
So yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So in the category we're in, there are different disclaimers for different states. So it's important to keep those two things included on all direct mail pieces, or keep the disclaimers included in the direct mail pieces, of course.
Yeah. So that being said, advantages, disadvantages. How do you keep a direct mail campaign flexible? Because it sounds like there's a lot of uncertainty at times on your end and a lot of things to consider. Maybe John, will start with you on that one.
Yeah, so I think it's getting ahead of it and knowing the key deadlines. I think that's super important. If you could parallel path your data path and your creative path, let's call it, or like your production path, it allows you to maintain that flexibility. And I would stick with those two, honestly, the data path and the creative path, and just getting ahead of the timelines.
Any levers you can kind of pull later on? And I asked that one of my favorite analogies for direct mail is comparing it to curling, where digital channels, sometimes I compare to dart, right? So in curling, it really resonates well if we've got a Winter Olympics month or year, because everyone seems to love to watch curling. But once a curler, forgive me if that's not the appropriate term for someone who curls, releases the stone, for example, there's no stopping it, right? But there's a long way for it to go before it reaches its target. And they've got teammates that can brush it, move it a little bit here or there, but at the end of the day, that stone's gone and it's going down the ice. Where a digital channel, I like to kind of compare more to a dartboard, where you can set up the line, throw 3 darts. If you miss, go grab them real quick. You can probably do that 10 times in the span of time it takes for that curling stone to get all the way down the ice. So is there anything, John, that you can think of or you've seen maybe at this job or at previous roles that you can do in an emergency to kind of brush the ice a little bit, if you will?
Yeah, I love the curling analogy. I think that's great. I never thought of it that way. But postage is I guess like is a big lever that you could pull, right? The difference between first class and was it third class, Matt?
Third, yeah, first, third.
Yeah, first and third.
Technically, it's a second, but it doesn't really come into play for marketing.
Sorry?
I think there's technically second class, but it doesn't
got
come
it.
into play for marketing now.
Got it. Okay. But I would say postage, right? Just because that determines when you can get in home or how quickly you can get in home. Jack mentioned formats earlier. So there are different lead times for formats production wise. So getting ahead of that and understanding what you could do with different formats and, you know, how that has an impact on your timeline. But then also freight, right? So how quickly can we get from the printer to the USPS before it's out of our hands?
Yeah.
Anything else that I'm missing?
No, the freight's a good point. I think a lot of folks will overlook it because they kind of think that mail goes from the print production line to the post office. But obviously with, you know, different saturation rates, postal discounts you can achieve by delivering your mail further into the postal stream. So freight, when we talk about freight, right, it's the act of getting from the printing press to the USPS. And in emergencies, sometimes, you know, especially in a state specific business like yours, hey, if I'm mailing to Ohio, if I send a truckload of postcards from my printing press in Illinois to the Ohio BMCs, right, that's going to shave me off some time. Maybe an expedited freight cost, but I can get some days back rather than going into, you know, bigger postal pools the traditional campaign would fall into. Very helpful, John. Jack, I'd love to hear your perspective a little bit on how working with an agency has helped utilize and grow the channel at FanDuel, especially, you know, before John got there with your limited experience.
Absolutely. And again, as you mentioned, I didn't have any experience prior to working here at FanDuel and executing direct mail campaigns. So I feel, and I wonder if other people agree, but direct mail, there is some sort of knowledge cost of entry, similar to it is in other channels, but unless you know it, you're not familiar with how printing works, what a bleed area is, exactly what postage costs, how you could find efficiencies with the types of postage based on how many bundles of paper you're buying and things like that. So going in alone is somewhat ludicrous and difficult. So having an agency by my side was so helpful to make the best determinations and fully evaluate the profile of everything that we're trying to do, and then make a decision on how to best do it. I like the freight discussion because I wouldn't know what printer in Ohio might be best located or closest to the post office that would shave off time in the event that, again, we're making this up, but the Ohio state regulator had an announcement that affects the launch of our campaign. So knowing that and being able to evaluate, okay, which printer should we pick based on how many pieces, which one might help us with CPMs and give us the most flexible timelines, and the digital versus, again, digital printing and like, again, more one-off printing. Again, all these things affect timing. And without the agency, you're kind of lost. So it's incredibly helpful.
John, any thoughts on, you know, obviously you're bringing a wealth of knowledge, just how you can still benefit from working with agency at all?
Yeah, for sure. I'd probably put it as a divide and conquer, right? So like there are a set level of responsibilities that I could manage and I can lead, spearhead, do all that. And then there's something that there's like another pillar, right, that I can lean on you guys to go and do. And then together we can make sure we put together an awesome product. So I would put it as differentiation of responsibility allows for clear focus. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Because I think that's felt on both sides, right?
For sure.
The agency side, there's oh, okay, John's got that. I can, think deeper about this, or hey, let's segment our data a different way. Let's just take another slice of this pie and see if anything comes up that we may have missed because we're so focused on other things when it comes to budgeting, planning, whatever it was.
Goes both ways, Matt. I'm thankful that you guys handle what you guys handle.
Fair, very fair. That's really helpful. I hope that gave good insight to everyone on the call on kind of how FanDuel specifically thinks about addresses direct mail. I do want to spend a little bit of time. I've been poking around, found some direct mail trivia that I think the folks on the call will find interesting. And I'd like Jack, John, if you don't mind, maybe rattle off a couple trivia questions, see how well you know direct mail, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit about each point. Does that work for you guys?
Absolutely. Just what happens if I get them wrong, though? Is that okay?
That's okay. No one's gonna. These are gonna be pretty specific numbers, so just try to get within one standard deviation. I'd be pretty impressed. Got it. All right, question 1. How many pieces of marketing mail does the average American household receive each year? Start with John. How many
400.
pieces of
400? 470.
470.
This is tough. I'm gonna maybe give a little bit more, walk you guys through my thought process. I'm like John here. But again, there's a difference, I think, between me and maybe the average American household, because I feel like I get a ton. But if we say 3 pieces a day and about 300 days a year minus the holidays and Sunday, again, I'm going big. I'm going to go with 900 pieces.
900.
Probably too big.
Answer is 454. So that one goes down. And that is data directly from the United States Postal Service. Question 2, this one will go to you, Jack, first. According to Epsilon, what % of US respondents say they enjoy getting mail from brands about new products? Let me read it again. What % of US respondents say they enjoy getting mail from brands about new products?
And I'm gonna, I think, use myself here for perspective that I'm a fan, especially if the creative's done really well and it's a product I haven't really heard about and want to read it. So I'm going to go with 75%.
You took my number. I'll go a little bit lower than Jack then. I'll say 70%.
59%, which I was surprised on. It seems high, but if you think about it, we talked a little bit on the data side and the things you can do in direct mail to segment, right? This great example is when I was doing catalogs for an outdoor retailer, and right, we've got data in-house that says, hey, this guy is really interested in fishing. In fact, the only thing he's ever purchased from us is fishing. Let's make sure we send him a fishing catalog. Now, if I take that data and say, yeah, this guy's only buying fishing stuff, but let's send him a women's clothing catalog. 1, we probably wasted 50 cents. 2, he's going to think the brand doesn't understand him. So I do think that's something you see in direct mail where marketers, direct mail marketers in particular, have gotten very good at 1, understanding what data they have access to, and 2, making the right decisions, especially around mail lists, on what households should receive a specific type of mail. It's quite a common saying in direct mail, but don't try to sell lawnmowers to condo owners. So know your audience, right? In your space, it might be, hey, this guy seems to play a lot of football fantasy sports. Maybe we don't send him a tennis offer, so forth. So that was interesting. I bet the answer, if you ask what % of respondents say they enjoy getting a pop-up when they're trying to read a newspaper article, is probably a lot less than 59%. John, we're going to do the next one to you. What % of direct mail recipients either read or scan the mail they get?
Could you explain what you mean by scan the mail?
I can't because it's not my question. It's from the Data and Marketing Association.
Fair. Since I don't know what it means, and I don't think a lot of other people know, I'm going to go 15%.
15?
Oh, sorry, you said
Read or
You said-
scan.
oh,
mail.
read or scan. Oh, that's got to be higher then. Say 50%.
Jack?
I think if you just told me 59% of people enjoy getting the mail, I'm gonna say add about 5% on top of that, people who actually not only enjoy it but read it. Let's go with 64%.
42%.
That's surprising.
42. It is surprising. I think the key difference there is, the last question had new products. And right, this is just someone gets their mail, right? Okay, I see it's a credit card offer. I just toss it. I don't read it, for example. Just a couple more of these because I don't want to go on too long with it. But on average, this is a fun one. On average, John, how long is advertising mail kept in a household?
How many days?
How many days?
Probably go 3 days.
3 days. Jack?
I'm gonna say 7. Give it a week before someone's like, okay, I gotta either do something with this or not.
17 days on average. And I do think, right, I have a little basket on my kitchen counter that stuff I want to revisit goes in, stuff I don't goes out. And probably every week, every 2 weeks, my wife and I will say, time to clear the box. So that makes sense. Also, I think catalog plays a big role there. People will keep a catalog around for months at a time if it's the right one.
Yeah.
Let me do a quick time.
I was gonna just say we value that. Again, someone putting a FanDuel direct mail piece on their fridge, having it stay there, multiple impressions is always good as opposed to just one.
Let's do just one more here, and then we'll wrap it up because we wanted to keep it to about 35, 40 minutes here. What % of people can recall a brand after receiving direct mail, Jack? What % of people can recall a brand after receiving direct mail?
55%.
John?
I'm gonna go a little higher. I think ad recall would be high. Jack, you said 55?
Yep.
I'll go 65%.
A little closer, 75%.
Almost there.
Wow. What is it? So if you look at like a digital banner or like an email.
Digital recall, according to this same survey, was 44%. Just under twice as high recall seeing a direct mail ad versus a digital.
Wow.
Before we open up to questions,
sense.
I want to be respectful of the line of work you guys are in and ask if you have a Super Bowl prediction for everybody listening. Let's start with Jack.
Yeah.
So I can tell you right now, the lines on our book are -3 for both of the favorites, so it's essentially even. So it really is anyone's year this year. I'm gonna have to say then, until the Chiefs show me that they can't win, they're the defending champs. Mahomes looks like he's healthy. I'm gonna go with the Chiefs.
Jack, we should probably throw in the odds. Odds are subject to change at any.
That's also true.
John, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with Jack on this one. I think you have to respect the Chiefs until proven otherwise. So, yeah, I'm with Kansas City.
Got it. And you guys
How about
both
you?
know me well enough to know I'm from Buffalo, so very much a Buffalo Bills fan. So there's no reason to get off the Bills train now. I think the Mafia is going to have their time to shine here. So.
Trying to go for the reverse jinx, but you didn't let it happen.
I know. I just can't. Before we wrap up, I do want to call out, we're going to make available at the end of this call to all registrants Speedeon has a kind of a 10-step direct mail checklist that we found to be very helpful, especially for people thinking about mail for the first time, or even people have been doing it for a while and are revisiting to say, hey, did you think about these specific things? So that when you go into planning your campaign, you make sure that you're doing it right and being as good of a curler as you can be. that will come out, I think, to everyone registered. So happy to answer any questions folks have on that. Hopefully you find it useful, just like you found this entire presentation useful. Now, we've got time for a couple questions. We've had quite a few come in. I'm pretty surprised. So I'm going to pull a couple off the top here and then read through everything else that's coming in. So let's start with, you touched on it earlier, Jack, I think, but what role does creative play in your campaign development timeline?
Yeah, this is a great question because we talked about creative, and it is, again, you have to factor in the variable, of course, when we're figuring out our timelines and what something is going to be able to be created, mock reviewed, and then again, actually printed. But I will say also, just like creative in general, if we don't have good creative, the best data in the world, the best formats, the best contingency planning, it doesn't matter if we're not able to speak to potential customers and existing customers, talk to them correctly. Like, we need to figure out the right fonts, think in the right order of where we put things on each of the different formats. So it's incredibly important and not something to be overlooked. Like, if you don't have the right CTA and things like that, then your best intentions are going to go out the window.
Let's see, another question here. John, I'll kick this to you. What's it like being a millennial in direct mail marketing?
A lot of learning. It's great though. I think it's great. I think there are a lot of similarities between digital marketing and direct mail marketing. So I think it's great. I think like there are 4 levers that you could pull with direct mail. So like you have your audience, you have your creative that Jack mentioned is extremely important. You have your format and you have your promo. So it sets up, if you're curious, right, it sets up for a lot of tests and a lot of learnings to come out of that that could easily be implemented. So A/B tests, attribution, all the good stuff. Yeah, I think it's awesome. What about you, Jack? What do you think?
Yeah, like to hear what Jack's.
Yeah, I think it's important that it's a long day. You're on your phone, you're on the internet all the time, and then you can go home and get an actual piece of mail and you have a moment to relax and actually read the whole thing. So, I've learned a lot, but there's certainly I think that alone speaks to the value that you can get and that it needs to be part of the media mix. It just shouldn't not be included.
Yeah, I'll share my perspective on that a little bit because I've been in mail for 10 years now. And when I started, compared to where it's at today, I actually think there are probably more millennials in direct mail today than there was 10 years ago. And that's been really interesting. I think D2C brands have played a big role in that, where they've started to understand the value of the channel itself. So you have, not traditional marketers, traditional direct mail marketers working in the channel, but now you have kids coming out of school, getting right into direct mail, which is an awesome starting point because I don't want to say if you can do direct mail, you can do any channel, but to John's point, the 4 levers are similar, and based on the lead times, the creative requirements, the significant cost implications of direct mail, I think if you're good at direct mail, you can be good at a lot of marketing channels. So it's been nice to see the channel itself continue to grow in popularity, and people want to hear about it, want to talk to you about it, rather than just saying, oh yeah, why don't you just email me the catalog, which is kind of how my career started. One more question here. Let's see. What is the average CPA of a direct mail campaign? I'll take that one because I'm sure you guys don't want to talk about CPA specifically, but that's a question that people ask me all the time, especially when I'm talking to a brand for the first time about direct mail. And you start talking to somebody about $400, $500 CPMs, right? The next logical question is, well, what type of CPAs can I expect? And the answer a lot of times is we don't know, especially if no one's been in mail before. To just say, oh, you can expect about a $250 CPA would be, in my opinion, irresponsible. So the way I like to approach a question like that is start with what CPA is acceptable on your end, or what is your target CPA? And from there, we work into, okay, what is our budget going to be? What would a rollout budget be? And then try to understand, given that budget, how many pieces of mail we can put in mailboxes. And then of those pieces of mail, what's the response rate we would need to actually reach the CPA goal that the brand has in mind. So if we go through that exercise and it comes out to be we need a 5% response rate on an acquisition mail piece, probably go back and say, hey, we're going to have to change our expectations of this, or make some dramatic adjustments to A, our offer, so we can get a higher response rate, or B, that we're not going to send a catalog, we're going to have to send a postcard and see if we can get achievable, acceptable CPAs there. So make sure you think about it all the way through, I guess, rather than just saying, what is my CPA going to be? Let me see if we have one more here. Someone asked about incremental impact, which we did touch on early on. So yes, there is a way to measure incremental impact. It's through obviously our mail group and our control group, and then looking at the delta between the response rates of those groups. Is there something that direct mail can do uniquely that digital cannot? Do either of you guys want to try that?
Digital meaning which channel?
Let's call it display and or social.
Good question. Right. So I think you could leverage different third-party data when it comes to display or social. You could leverage obviously your first party to build models. So not necessarily from that frame of mind. However, I would say the big difference, you could do clean A/B tests. So with your control and your exposed group, but also just like within the actual audiences that you're going to be mailing, you could do clean A/B tests. TBD on if you could still do that with Facebook. I know you can't do it with display though. So
yeah, and even John, to add to that, I think even in your most 5 carousel Facebook ad, the amount of information you can get on a postcard is significantly more than even kind of a more involved digital ad. And also there's the physical aspect of the mail piece that, research after research says physically touching, interacting with mail drives to higher response rates from both acquisition standpoint and the CRM standpoint.
Yep.
One more here. With the cheap CPM on digital ads, how do you best justify the more expense cost per impression with direct mail? I think that one is, again, being agency side, I get asked a lot. My knee-jerk response to that question is, do you measure success in CPMs, or do you measure it in CPAs and ROI? So yes, you can send 1,000 emails to 100 direct mail pieces, but ultimately, what is your incremental impact of those dollars you're spending digitally? Can you measure it? And two, what type of CPAs or CACs are you getting between both channels? Assuming they're measured correctly. I'm pretty bullish on CPM will be able to hold its weight there, regardless of how cheap one channel may be over the other.
And I think I know every business is different, but there are different ways to target that would allow, depending on budget, to bring down CPMs. So it depends on what it is that you want to do. But maybe this is for you, Matt. I don't know if this is the right place for that conversation, but the different ways of targeting via the post office or using data to kind of control your costs, as well as just like leveraging the agency. Again, we do get kind of favorable pricing. We have ways that we can keep that in line, which is always good.
Well, that took us honestly 15 minutes longer than I thought it would, which is great. Thank you, everyone. We had great questions. I know we didn't get through all of them, but my contact information will go out along with that DM checklist. So if you want to talk more specifically about how to think about or use data sources, what's available first party versus third party, not necessarily in a FanDuel sense, but in the marketplace, we're happy to talk to you about that as well. So that being said, John, Jack, this was great. Thank you. Really appreciate you guys taking the time, especially with being in the middle of NFL playoffs. I assume it's a pretty busy time for the folks over at FanDuel.
This is fun. Thank you.
Yeah,
I
thanks for having
will
us.
kick it back to Raquel to wrap us up, and thank everyone who joined.
Thank you so much, all of you. That was a great presentation, and I know that we're all looking forward to see how the game day goes down. So thank you as well to our audience for joining us here today. If you would like to learn more about Momentum's webinars or custom virtual events, please feel free to contact me directly at raquel@momentumevents.com or visit us online at www.momentumevents.com. As Matt shared, we will be sending in our thank you email some great materials for you to follow up and contact the team if you have more questions and would like to learn more. You'll be seeing that 24 hours after this webinar. And with that, we wish you a pleasant afternoon and thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.